Hi all, welcome to my players to watch for the 24-25 season in terms of champion, challenger and contender. I was hoping to do this a little bit sooner, but I just kept an eye on everything and thought I'd take it from there. Obviously there's been others that have done equally good videos about like players to watch for all like champion, challenger, contender, under 23s as well. I should add as well. I will be adding under 23s. I realise I should be mentioning that at the start. But obviously there's quite a few we've got to keep an eye on. Quite a few that we're not sure. Like yes, there might be say a second choice goalie, but do they get a transfer, for example, to become a starter as well? So even though they may fall under a champion bracket just now, they may go to challenger. And if they're say challenger, they may go to contender or champion, where it be goalies, defenders, mids, forwards, etc. Now it's not necessarily. I was initially going to make it like 20 players each, but I thought like it's not necessarily work that way because there's so many that you can keep an eye on in various guises, really, as it were. So from like the first couple of lines of like players, Matt Ryan's the one that intrigues me a little. Obviously we're going to Roma. As far as I believe, he'll be a number 2, but even then, for like £4, not exactly a big risk. Dubravka, I'm not sure where he's 100% going for certain yet. Kevin Muller's consistent, like £14's not a bad dent into it, really, in the grand scheme of things. Alvaro Valles, Stankovic, Leo Roman, I'm intrigued to see what he does this season. If he stays at Mallorca and becomes the number 1, then should be steady and solid. If money is no option, the likes of Martinez, Jan Oblak, Gazzaniga, De Gea is going to be interesting at Fiorentina. Falcone should be very solid. Svalar, Majeki is another one. Gulashi is another fairly cheap option, which makes all the difference really if you've got like options to kind of go with. Noah is solid and net as well, but it comes down to like what your budget really allows, and I feel that there's options. Like if money was no option, if it was me personally, the likes of like my Nan feels like a top tier option. Got domestic and European and international utility. It just, if you can get him under £100, you're laughing, and because of how often he does get clean sheets, plays into his hands immensely, and I feel like that's what you kind of want in a goalie, really, in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, it definitely can be shrewd. Like for me as well, the likes of Neuer, Becker, Alisson even, intrigue. Belarus was someone initially I'd looked at as under 23 goalie for the cheap end. Larson Noors should be solid enough in St Etienne, hopefully, depending on how their season goes. Tenas, I'm intrigued if he stays at PSG or transfers away. But Verbruggen's another interesting one. Really just transferred to Marseille, so that makes their battle to be number 1 all the more interesting. Pickford for £40's not too bad either. In terms of when you go into like defenders, mids and forwards though, it gets a bit more kind of like not necessarily interesting. It's more a case of where does your budget allow, and are you playing on the hope of cards or boxes? Because I'm someone that's a box person just now, on the hope of getting essence, build up, or even get some cards, even some level ups when it comes to the rare side of it. But from a limited point of view, there is like no shortage of like options. Like Franqueza, Mojica's definitely solid. Senesi, like Senesi for me is always just like solid numbers. It'll be interesting to see how Mikel Nadi does this season. Very, very solid numbers last season, and I'm thinking if he can put some kind of steady run as well, like he could be solid. Then Milinkovic, obviously at Nottingham Forest now from Fiorentina. He was a solid player in Serie A, so it'll be interesting to see how his form translates in the Prem. Kenny Lala found some good form at the end of the season. Obviously, shall be an interesting one how he performs. Christopher Julien did some steady numbers last season. At the end, there just for a couple people I knew had him, and they were like, "Oh look, I've got him, and this is what he's done for me." But Matias Oliveira, very solid over the summer. Hopefully can cement his position down at Napoli under Conte. But it will be interesting. Like fullbacks, left back side has always been kind of was raised for a number of years. Oliveira's kind of slotted in, so it'll be interesting to see how he battles that kind of position. Like for me personally, if I was going anything, I generally would lean like Premier League. I feel has the most potential. Like Angelino, for example. Obviously now at Roma, I think him with a full pre-season in him can do steady numbers if he stays fit. Like that's what's going to make the difference for Angelino. Him fully fit and fit. So try that again. Not just fit, but like being able to put a run of form together is all the difference. All of it's removed the champion competition that avoid. Thank you, Sorare. Thank you. Baraghi is another one I've always recommended to people. Like super steady, consistent. Tarek Mitchell's another one. If money's no option, like you go for like Hakimi, obviously, but at the same time you could maybe have the same success running Skriniar, Vitek. If anyone ever owned Vitek when he was in the Eredivisie, he was a bit of a cheat code. Obviously not so much now, but see what happens with him, because we'd like him to return to former numbers. Orban's super steady, super consistent, and not a big dent in the bracket, but he's someone like if you're wanting just that little bit higher tier and someone that has domestic, European and international utility, it definitely then helps in that respect. Anthony Robinson, another one in the same kind of like domestic, international utility. And that's what generally I like to look for in these kind of players is, do you have domestic utility first and foremost, like consistently? If you do, then that's great. If you have international, like if for like a national team, that's handy. And then if your team's in Europe, will you possibly be playing in Europe as well? Like Juan Miranda, Tapsoba, these kind of players. Ricardo Rodriguez intrigues me for next season. See how he does with the move. Been at Torino for a number of years, and it'll be interesting to see if he remains a starter, as it were. The likes of like Brentford for me is the interesting one. Like the likes of Ajer and Pinnock. Like Pinnock was a cheat code like at times last couple of years, but be interesting to see how he progresses. Pavlovic will be an interesting one, being a cheat code in Austria, now in Italy. Will be interesting to see how he progresses. Like £7 for him. Like AC Milan, will he be a starter? But wait and see how that one progresses. So there's a healthy supply of defenders accounted for there. Mid-wise, are we on the first page? Yes, we are. That's fine. Like low end, like I love Franqueza. I always mention Franqueza. I've got him. I've used him like the last year or so. Been very, very consistent. Like year and a half. Super consistent. Abisher's handy. Was handy for cap modes, and been very steady. It was very consistent in the Euros. Salai very good domestically and for international, so has his uses there. Munetsi for Rems, another one. I won him fairly recently, and I was like, oh. But even then, it wasn't someone that because I don't do champion, I was like, I'd rather get out of him. Paul Nobel, very consistent last season. Will be interesting to see how he transitions this season. Juan Cruz, Diata's an interesting one. Diata kind of found some good form at the end of last season as well. Jacob Murphy intrigues me to see what happens with him if he stays Premiership and all that kind of stuff. Like Sergi Dardar, I'd like to wish could be consistent, but obviously not all the time playing for Mallorca, but when playing and in a good run, he's like a form player. He can be very good on the assist return of the game, as it were. So something to factor in there. Bracalo's back to Serie A after a stint in Croatia where he became a cheat code basically. He was a cheat code in Croatia. Hopefully he can find that form again to help out. If you're going cheap Prem, like say Ryan Yates, certainly an option, but with how many players that basically Forest are bringing in, you've got to be kind of wary in the grand scheme of things. Like Remo Fruller's steady enough, but it's just, as I said, the same problem you're going to have when you're looking around the league. Janel, very consistent, and like he's been, when you can get somebody like consistent like him for less than, like I've seen him less than £1, it makes all the difference. Benjamin Bourgeois, be interesting to see how he performs. Like anyone for Rennes is always a very like it's like Rennes in Serie A, Rennes in Ligue 1, Bologna Serie A, Torino, then like Freiburg in the Bundesliga, trying to think, like Valencia, Seville. There's like little cheat codes across, like what I'm also meaning is the players that there's quite a few that are consistently get those like 60 plus point games. It's just a case of having like the right ones. Jackson Irvine and Abdelli, and these guys were cheat codes in like Bundesliga 2 and League 2 last season, and even like the last, like it's in Irvine especially the last couple of years since leaving Hibs to go to the Bundesliga 2. Be interesting to see how his form transitions. Ritsu Duan, another one, if money is no option, that worth getting in. Ivan Martins, another one I'm intrigued to see how he does domestically and in Europe this season. As we're talking about that, someone nabbed up his cheap one for less than £5. Someone knows ball, so fair play to them. Ruben Vargas, I'm intrigued to see how he does this season after very impressive Euros. As I said, another money option is Danny Olmo. Like 20 odd quid for him is not too bad for his limit. Manu Fuster intrigues me for this season. Very, very impressive at Albacete. Someone I, many a time over the last couple of years, I went, why did I not get him? Why did I not get him? Why did I not get him? And it's kind of like, I'm intrigued to see how he does. Like for a couple of quid, it's definitely worth the shout. Like he's at Las Palmas, so that is the only concern. But I feel like he can still put together some good numbers. He's very good on like that assist return, and that is what he'll be expected to do next season. Forward wise, there's I love how it's jumped out the transition from champion. Forward wise, if you get the forward version of Crepin, Diata is not too bad. Lavi Plado intrigues me for next season. Solid numbers last season. Brecalo, as we said earlier, and this is the thing, anyone that's got a mid and a forward card, it's not a bad shout tying them up, because you see, so if you've got a mid and a forward card, if you're running multiple teams for champion, it kind of helps, because you might see it, so I've got that player at that, and depending what your budget allows, it definitely can play your hands quite nicely. The 5 forwards that really intrigue me this season are Vissa for Brentford, Marvin Dukes for Werder Bremen, Richard Duan for Freiburg, Aspas, see how he does this season. Feel he's going to still... maybe this might be his last season of seriously good numbers, I really feel. And then Tiani Noslin, like I had him for a cup of coffee, like his 22-23 card, like literally had it for a cup of coffee, now at Lazio, and like just to kind of illustrate, like he popped off for Verona second half of last season and kind of merited the move, as it were. Like, so it'll be interesting to see how he transitions, but Tiani definitely someone that excites me from a forward point of view, with domestics and all that kind of stuff. And Cizo's another one, like there is talk of him possibly going, so something to factor in, because if he goes to like say a challenger or a contender team where he's like a focal point of that attack, his price would go through the roof. Irvin Cardona's an intriguing one as well. Utatara, I'm not sure what the situation with him is for next season at the moment. Igor Matanovic, if like anyone that followed second tier last season with him knew how much of a cheat code this guy was, like some seriously good numbers at times last season. And Eintracht Frankfurt paid good money for him, and I genuinely think I've seen quite a few of the early access cards, and I'm like, if money was no option, like not necessarily me on so rare, I'd be like 20 quid's intriguing for him for like the current one, depending on what you're going for. If you're going in season, there is a shout that you could make it back. I love how it's jumped again, but we'll move to Challenger in the meantime. So jump from that to goalies. Now, goalie wise, we are basically going to just tackle the easy way about it, which is Eredivisie, Belgium and Turkey. That is basically the way we're going to break this down. So it's nice and straightforward and nothing too strenuous, because yes, there is other leagues, but when we're trying to focus on just the specific European leagues, you've not really got too much to work with. Yes, you could factor in Europa League. In fact, we will. We'll throw in Europa League and Conference because they actually fall under the hierarchy as well. So, Vaesen is a front runner right away. He plays at Groningen. Muslera is another solid one. Mijanley, Schindler, Jakub Slovik, Nikolic, like Davy Ruth, Sinan Bola, Barkas. Then you've also got Valsen, who's not started off too well, but still a solid enough shout. Passfair came in at the moment as number 1, which is quite a good laugh to see, but is what is. If money is no option, then Diogo Costa is your man. Like literally, there is no one else to kind of consider really for that goalkeeping position. Then, for me, I'm a big fan of Thomas Didion, Matthias Branderhorst, and Walson was the other. Yeah, it was just Branderhorst and Didion, and you could kind of throw Howen into the mix as well, because the three of them are all like Unerstal's not started the season off too well, sadly. Van Osch now £1. I might actually try and nab one of him, because I've got into him cheap, but because of how they started off the season, Howen's relatively cheap. Same with Branderhorst, he's not too bad if he is somewhere. Wellenreuter errors, like Didion's now £7 banter. Branderhorst is pushing 9. I've got like 2 Branderhorst, 1 Didion. I had 2 Didions briefly. One was an in-season card, but one was the old card. But yeah, we'll keep an eye. Didion, like Branderhorst is more a lock because he's at Sittard and Didion's at Willem. Like Didion was very solid, so knowing that you're going to have to stump up now £7 for these cards is a laugh. If I look at his in-season card, what has that been selling for? About £9. So yeah, and I basically took profit on that. Current cards, yeah, £7 for the and I'm not really stressed to sell. Like I wish I'd now bought more of them, and I like him and it's crashed. Great. Never mind. Right, competition, eligibility, challenger, on to defenders. So, as I said, it's not so bad when I know that I'm just trying to cover. Why EFL? I knew there was another. Like, just quickly talking about EFL. Your challenge with the EFL. Collins is away, for what I've been told. But then you've got like Paul Nardi factor in, Angus Gunn. Like EFL goalies are a little bit harder to work with, so be prepared for that, folks. If brutally honest, so Zoot started the first game of the season, I see. So for AZ, so that's definitely something to factor in as well. Jurón Zoot, another one. In the solid bracket, shall we say, and it's crashed again by the looks of it. Great. Don't know what's happened. There. So we'll not check goalies in terms of how they're performing, because that's just clearly something has happened in the system. But basically, once we get through these again, Super League. And Portugal, there we go. I thought I'd picked Portugal, but I clearly hadn't, because I'd obviously just covered Europa League and all that kind of stuff. Conference League champion, yeah, we've got everything. So defenders, remove the in-season. For me, I like Twente, I like Arcasay, I like Feyenoord. I'm just generally working with what I know within these kind of like divisions. Like Sparta Rotterdam's another one that looks solid. Like Almer's an intriguing one for me. Like I've got a few of the Almer players like Florinus, Guillaume, Hansen, Robinette from an attacking point of view, but defence, like midfield wise, I've kept away. But also the likes, like for players that all intrigue, like Dragones. Yeah, I can never say it. Dragones. I can never get the syllables out my tongue there. Mitchell Dick started off the season well and could do a good season actually, which intrigues. El Karuni, £3. Like if you've not considered this guy, like under 23s and for Challenger, very consistent and a bit of a cheat code for £3. So like, and there is quite a few people that have promoted him heavily, so be wary of that as well. Vergever, like, is another solid player, like for basically 60-70p probably that you could get him for. Like, what's wrong with that? Marcus Lopez, be wary a little bit, but for now starting at Feyenoord. Like Fortuna, a few people have recommended, which will be intriguing. Floron had Gonaj, the Kosovoan defender, with a bit of a cheat code in the second Bundesliga and now in Turkey, and like will be interesting to see how he does. Biscagli, literally the cheat code in Challenger. When money is no option, he is the man you buy. Gus Small, I'm going to have a look at, see if I can get him cheap, because I'm not playing just now. Be intriguing to see how low I can get him for. others that kind of spring out for, like, if not necessarily if money's no option kind of thing. Like Christian Burgess not playing is intriguing. I remember looking at him, so I'm glad I never considered that, because he was reasonably priced when I was looking for his rare. But for me, the likes of Hormans, like, you work with what you know within these kind of divisions. Erdhausen's going to be steady this season, I feel. Ryan Flamingo, another. Like, there'll be consistent numbers. It's where, like, Mauro Junior's another intriguing one. Does he do well? Sotalo's going to be a bit of a cheat code again. David Bates intrigues. Taking over the mantle of Jordi van Leeuwenberger of, like, an AA machine at Mechelen. Burger Mealing's another one, should be steady throughout the season. Jonas Svensson's another of the challenger cheat codes, and it's like what we'll go looking out for is those challenger cheat codes. It makes all the difference in the grand scheme of things. Mids, there's like literally no shortage of, pardon me, where you can kind of rock up, have fun, and just make things happen. Like for me, the likes of Matthias Cajolo, I can never get his name right. Kaneko intrigues me this season. Itak Kara's another cheat code-esque player. Didn't start the first day of the season well, but don't read into that too much. He was a cheat code last season. Ukili, another consistent player, didn't start off the first day too well, but with Arcasy having a hard opening day is to be expected. Maxim will be intriguing to see how he performs at Gaziantep this season. Hannes van der Bruggen, another one I've looked at for like limiteds and rares just to give options. Pelle Clement, another one that I was a bit of a steady, consistent player last season. Zaidu Yusuf, another one that, like, where money is no option. Like, going to the RKC players again, like Lokesa, I've got for under 23 limited, and his rare as well. Intrigued to see how he performs this season. With RKC as well, from an attacking point of view, Zawada, Richnell Margaret, Dionelo Cleonese as well. Evert Lindhorst for go ahead intrigues. Jens Tornstra, I wish I'd got his rare. Kicked myself. I might still buy it if it's cheap enough, but ship might have sailed after impressive performance at the weekend, showing that age is only a number. Julian Bass, I think was ill, so be wary of that, but someone that can produce good numbers. Gus Till, Kasper Kozlowski, other players that are very consistent and just a case of making it happen. Michael Sadalek, once back from injury, another of these cheat code-esque players. Machu Martins, Mace Hoodiemakers, Calvin Stings, be wary of because he could be away to the MLS, so his use could run out very quickly because of everything going on. Paxton Aronson, another that I've looked at for this season. I'm intrigued to see how he performs. Castro Montes as a midfield card just is another one that can produce steady numbers. But Verscharen, another Lucas Torres, another of the bracket of if money is no option, I feel he'll kind of produce the goods for you. And it's what you kind of like, sometimes you might, depending if money is no option, you might have like Team A is like, this is the super squad, Team B is the mid tier, and Tier C is like the cheap end, because obviously you can field 3 teams. For forwards, when money is no option, Dries Mertens, Nuno Santos, they're all kind of like the names that kind of spring out to mind. Santi Jimenez, another. Like if you're being cheaper in the grand scheme of things, like Gianni Bruno didn't play first day of the season, I wish. Let me have a look. He didn't play, which is interesting when he was a big part of them getting up. Because there is talk of him getting a transfer, so I'm not sure what the P's and Q's are. And it's done it again. It's done it again. Done it again. It's done it again. I'll just leave it to forward. Better not, because I'll get the MLS ones and we're not really here to cover MLS. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'll just leave it, because we're going to move to Contender in a minute. But basically, with forwards out with the MLS, as it were, like Richie Nell Margaret was an intriguing one. Obviously didn't play opening day, came off the bench. So be wary of that. Ricky Van Wolfswinkel now is getting is the like kind of like a second string option now, more an impact player with Sam Lammers brought in. So keep that in mind at Twente. But Cornelius Hansen intrigues in terms of like the grand scheme of things. Like David Minn's going to have expectations on him this season to pop off. Like as I said, Cleanies, Robinette, Hansen, they are hoping that for Almer and Arcasay, like yes, they've had hard games against PSV and AZ on the opening day, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're out of like the equation. Like Zion Fleming, we're not sure what's happening with him, if he's getting a transfer, because some people have speculated that some haven't and all that kind of stuff. If he gets a transfer, I'm intrigued to see where he goes, because if he goes to like the Eredivisie, for example, then does he remain a starter? Duncan Watmore started off the season well, will be some expectations on him as well, as Millwall try and maybe get near the playoffs this season. Oliver Antman, another one that's in the intrigues bracket, but where you can justify him. Luke De Jong, another of that kind of super consistent cheat code players. Icardi, another. Christopher Peterson, he's literally quadrupled in price. I got him for like 40p, got a goal, well, an assist opening day, and just kind of delivered the goods, shall we say. And people were suddenly like, oh, I've got to buy him. And it was like, well, Graham's already had him. G already had him in. But, like, for me, it's like Eredivisie is like main league I would tackle for Challenger if it was me personally, but that's just my interpretation really of the grand scheme of things. Now for Contender goalies, there is like no shortage. Like J1, we can kind of like, we know the likes of Kim Jin Hyun, Murakami, Yuya Osako, all the usuals that kind of pop off, Kositani, but it comes down to what we're going to focus here is the more European leagues, as it were. So we'll filter all of them just now, hopefully get them all. Prem, that's near enough everyone. I'll throw Conference, Europa, Champions League in as well. So that's near enough everyone. That kind of helps all the brackets. So Ruben Yanez, cheat code, number one basically at Gijon. I fancy Gijon to be up there or thereabouts this season. It's Keta for Racing. Should be an interesting one. Now, like for anyone that's got Maguna Guita, be very wary of him, just with how transfers have happened at the team, and there is expectation for a bit of battle for the number one to be had. Zieler's another one that's just very, very solid. If you're going Scottish Prem, Laidlaw and Meatoff are kind of like your two safe options. Bursic I would keep away from a Hibs point of view, but Meatoff I would expect Aberdeen to get more clean sheets as the season goes. But yeah, some silly goals to be had that they've conceded. Adam Steshkal, Dakovic at Siebenek is another one that's very solid. Ander Quintero, £7 not too bad as well. Like 11, nearly 12 now for Adam is quite intriguing. Nadal's an intriguing one for a couple of quid, but Zidane keep away from because he's had a bit of a mixed pre-season. Edgar Badilla, £3 now for him, intrigues. Jose Caro expected to be number one. If money's no option, Schmeichel Butland, that's where everyone's going to go. Everyone will go that in Contender and expect him to kind of pop off, do the business, and be like, oh look, I've won with my Celtic or Rangers stack or whatever options I've ran with. John McCracken, another one at Dundee, expected to be number one this season and should be solid enough. Wonder if we'll get any more of the other goalies that are in that lower end bracket. Doesn't look like it. Wait, Tobias Lawell's on this page. Let me go back. Aston Roxburgh is another one that we're, for now, is number one until said otherwise. Tobias has not started the season well, that's why. Yeah, keep away. I've kind of thought I'd seen that he'd been playing poor, but didn't want to say it for certain. Defensively, high promotion is where I quite like the look of. The likes of Escudero, who's now at Deportivo, Gil Rosas at Gijon, Oerlungo, Danny Calvo, they are solid options as well. Also, Bradley Danger, one of the biggest cheat codes last year for Rodez, got a transfer. Would be intriguing to see how he performs in the division with a better team, as it were. Jean Garcia, be intriguing to see how he holds up with his transfer. Obviously, if money is no option, your likes of Alistair Johnston, defensive Rio Hatate card, Greg Taylor, Liam Scales, all those Celtic options. But the likes of Halstenberg certainly intrigues as well for how they do. Robert Pierre, once back from injury, should be there or thereabouts. Say Sai Moroya, another consistent defender. Anderson Arroyo, another in that kind of solid, consistent bracket that just is what you're looking for, really. Like, I want to say Tenerife players like your Sergio Gonzalez in it, but like defensively they've been a little bit sus last year. Milo's maybe the only one you'd consider at a bit of a push, if I'm brutally honest. Robin Knock is steady enough, and going down like divisions should help his case. Like, I'd like to have like I'd like to be saying like your Austria Viennas and your Hertha Berlins, but some of these guys that like they're not starting off the season too well. Like Hertha Berlin probably will as the season goes on. There is that expectation for them to get back up, but it just comes down to like what your budget is. Daniel Heber, another one. Like Chris Carden, from a Hibs point of view, like him starting would be more impressive. I feel he is someone that can get you assists if he can get a run of games going again. And that's kind of what he needs, and hopefully Hibs recognise that sooner than later, because it will. I think him with confidence, him with form in him will certainly produce some good numbers. Midfield wise, Bradley Danger, you get the defender and the midfield card. If money's no option, you buy both. You buy a defender and a mid card. Like for me as well, Alex Corredera at Tenerife intrigues for next season how he performs. Like Graham Shinney, Jan Danda, Blair Spittle. Yes, I'm mentioning Hearts players. Hakon Evgen is like another cheat code with potential. Like one that I'm keeping an eye on at a personal level is Kento Hashimoto. I'm intrigued to see where he goes because he's a free agent at the moment. So if few teams are sniffing about. Spain, Japan, basically stays in contender. That is what it's looking at the moment. Money no option players is Matt O'Reilly, and Abergel for £3 is a bit of a for me definitely has serious potential. Jesus Bernal, Alex Ter, Mikel Meza, Luzmi Cruz has potential this season, with now being a focal point of the Tenerife attack. Because he's a midfield card, he plays more as an attacker, so that will be interesting to see how he develops, shall we say. That's probably the best way to describe it. But it's just like Mark O'Hara, if once we know what injury concerns he has, if he can address them, would be ideal. Hesse Bennett, if you've used him at all, he is a bit of a cheat code for many a reason. Bianchini, another one. I've seen a few folk actually get some success from buying his card, so be interesting. Nico Melamed, Taiba, Connor Barron intrigues as well with him at Rangers. It's just a case of playing to like your strengths and your budget, like Mo Salah, Luke McGowan for Dundee as well if you wanted to stack up a little bit. Marvin Wanizek didn't start off too great opening day, but someone that can really deliver some big numbers. Aguirre, if you're going like Ibers, like even individual teams as well, Aguirre and Matias Pereira, solid, steady, consistent players as well. Forwards, from a contender point of view, your ultimate cheat code is literally Inigo Vicente, literally a cheat code, because he literally just pops off. But there's players that I'm liking the look of this season is like Alex Sanchez, Juancho Ortuno, obviously Ramon Mires away to Saudi, Dul Jacob. We have a love-hate relationship. I had him on the cheap. Did nothing. He did stuff for 2 games, did nothing, and for about a pile of games, then disappeared, then suddenly popped off, and I was like, oh aye. And then now he's like 250. Julien Lobet intrigues for this season, how he performs. Hibs-wise, we don't talk about like Boyle Venta, Mikola Sadley, Guido Burgstahler's steady enough. Simon Murray's another one that has big potential, very good AA numbers, very good decisive numbers, and that is kind of what you need. If you want a goal scorer like Simon Murray at Dundee, I feel has the kind of potential for that to happen for people. Gustavo Santos Cruz, quite a few people I know got him like super cheap at the start of the season, and hoping that he can produce the good for him. Juan Otero, now that he's permanently at Gijon, shall be an interesting one to see how he leads the line, and I feel like he can definitely get like that 10-15 goals that can help them get up, maybe back into La Liga. Goebbels will be interesting to see how he performs this season. I feel like there is a bit of an expectation on him, so it will be like kind of paramount of what he can do. Like anyone that knows about Inigo, is basically like a tenner for him just now is very well priced. It comes down to if he stays at Racing, he is literally the biggest difference is you don't necessarily run a Racing stack. If you're technically going to, you run Arana, Inigo Vicente and Esqueta. Defensively, midfield, you get hampered a little bit. So factor that in immensely with like your approach. But it's definitely, Arana's like £2.50 now. It's kind of mad. Like I got him for like £1. In fact, it might have been less than £1. But that is that. Under 23s, we have like basically I can remove leagues now because it's fair game at this point because we are just going to open up on anything and everything. But basically, goalies, if we go to goalies first, quickly run through this. As I say, goalie wise, I like Dakovic, I like Steskal, Kositani if you're wanting someone just now. Leo Norman intrigues me for this season if he will be number one. But if I was going for starters for now, I would say Adam Steskal and Dakovic. Yes, they are playing for weaker teams in Tyrol and Siebenek, but both have produced steady numbers so far, especially Dakovic. Dakovic is getting good AAs. That is a difference maker in helping. Schendelaar for Pexwall was another to kind of throw it into the hat. I wonder if Dakovic shows up very early on at all. Don't think he does because obviously he's not. It's an old card. Let me put his first name in. It might give me it. Yeah, he's £9 now, but basically 2 solid games so far, and he's someone that I like. Siebenek have started off the season well, and it makes all the difference. So, as I say, if you're looking under 23s, then factor that in immensely. Defensively, there is like if you're going scraping the barrel, like the likes of Toya Nakamura is not a bad shout. Like I've had him last season for Constable, got out of him for this season because I knew right away what I was expecting, with how sadly poor they are defensively. They just leak goals for fun. Sia Baba's been playing a lot of games and isn't too bad, but obviously as we said, if we're focusing on players to play beyond the winter, basically November, then you're basically like Nayel Mesatu was starting to put good numbers in, and then just looks like he's had a bit of a bad start. So factor that in into your approach, shall we say. But Tom Rolfe, Danny Tassendi, just some of the one like as I said, El Karuni we mentioned earlier, definitely in that kind of like you've got to kind of consider him. Like Juan Mosquera for MLS, another solid shout, but obviously you've got to factor in playoffs, all that kind of stuff. Like joys of, like this is why we don't necessarily build the list on like Sorare data. But Goof, Nishio, Lukiba, Nathan Collins is another. Like Collins is fairly cheap because you can factor in him for contender as well as sorry, not contender, champion as well as under 23, and it's sometimes that's when, depending on what your budget allows. Joe Scally's going to be an intriguing one this season. Bobby Thomas, Alex Valley, Killian Saudilla. Saudilla's an intriguing one, like how he steps up this season, I suppose, with him away at the Olympics. So Manhoff, Sergio Gomez, both of these players. Josh Doig's another one with Serie B if he stays there. Milan Van Ewijk at Coventry is another. And as we say, Brian Flamingo, Jared Brantthwaite, depending on what happens with him. I've jumped to forwards, but I'll do mids first. As we said, mids, if like VT Pereira from an MLS point of view, they're like solid. Tito intrigues me for this season. Does he get more game time and all that kind of stuff? Kenzo, obviously now in Championship, be intriguing to see how he steps up. If money is no option, then the likes of Matt O'Reilly is literally who you buy. But Ukili has a bit of expectation on him this season at Arcasay, and he is someone I have and is kind of a main focal point. Luzmi Cruz, as we mentioned, in that cheaper bracket, and someone if can kind of step up. He was like player of the year for Tenerife. If he can step up even more and put more goals and assists into his repertoire, then that 85p investment could suddenly turn into a nice one. Lucchesa we mentioned already, Cleonese, all those guys from Arcasay, Julien Bass we mentioned, Bianchini, there's another one like to factor in, Dirk Proper, Morante as well to kind of ponder in as well. Amir Richardson's just transferred to Fiorentina, so certainly one to factor in. But it fundamentally just Connor Barron, as we mentioned, for Rangers. Danilo, I'm intrigued to see like how he does. And Sergio Gomez is another one defender and mid card, so see what you can find with him and make it happen. Kasper Kozlowski, as we mentioned earlier as well. So like that's what's quite good, like when you go digging around, that you know that you can find players that have good say Challenger is their main thing, but they've also got the fall. If someone has fallback on Contender or Challenger, then you're kind of laughing really. As I said, forwards, Lobet intrigues, Hansen intrigues me for how they perform, but like the under 23 forwards is a little bit harder. Ivan Azon, I'm not 100% sure how he performs, but Bianchini is where I'd rather kind of go more towards, but you're finding more here that it's more Asia and America over Europe is what I've noticed more. But like Keio Nakamura, Uetara and Shizo if you're looking from a Champions perspective, and it's just making it work within budget. Like if you've got like a couple £100 that you're going to say put in and say I'm going to do 9 teams, then you genuinely could build like 9-10 teams for this. Hugo Ekitike is another of that bracket of if money is no option but also expectations on him as well. But like Fatu is just a big spend, big risk, so be wary of like what you're committing towards in the grand scheme of things. Fabio Silva's another one, Ryan Philippe, another in that not necessarily money option thing. Dallinger's going to be quite a few I've got him in there ones to watch this season, and definitely can see why, but it's just like Madueke is another one because he's got a few teams sniffing about on him, so be wary with him. Sarui is another one with I think he's just getting a transfer inbound or had the transfer, so keep that one in mind. Marcelo Ryan in J1, another Lorenzo Luca, another one that has expectations this season as well to kind of deliver. But yeah, there's no like real shortage of like options, it's just a case of what you can work with. But as I said folks, let me know who you're fancying, not fancying, all that kind of stuff. I'm feeling prepared with like the main competitions that we have available for like Champion, Challenger, Contender, under 23s, and just trying to have fun with it. That's the way I'm looking at it. Try to have fun, but if I can bring boxes into the equation, then I'm laughing, and from a limited and rare point of view. But as I said, any questions folks, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. So have a good one folks, take it easy all, thanks for listening. Apologies for this being quite a long-winded one, but joys of trying to cover all bases, all competitions, and try and do it in one video rather than about 4. So have a good one folks, and I'll catch you all later.